Welcome everybody to my channel, The 16BitPrick. This video is the first in the series of where we're going to be looking at the original Resident Evil games that came out on the PlayStation 1 console. And what better place to start than with the original Resident Evil. It's an iconic series in the gaming industry, and to be honest, one of my personal favourites. For the most part, well, at least definitely the earlier games anyway. So let's take a look at the first Resident Evil title for the Sony PlayStation 1 console. I hope you enjoy.
Resident Evil is a survival horror game released in March of 1996 for the Sony PlayStation Console. Developed and published by Capcom, it is considered as the first survival horror game, but the roots for this game can be traced back to a little game entitled Sweet Home, released by Capcom back in 1989 for the Japanese Family Computer, also known as the Famicom. Resident Evil was seen as somewhat of a more modern remake of Sweet Home at the time, with how the game played out in a mansion, limited inventory slots, puzzles, and emphasis on surviving. Resident Evil was originally supposed to be on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1993 when development originally began, but later got scrapped for a third-person game with pre-rendered backgrounds for the upcoming PlayStation console. What makes this game even better is that the creator of Sweet Home, Takuro Fujiwara, helped to produce this game alongside director and legend Shinji Mikami, so he could finally see the game that he really wanted to create back in 1989. The game is set in July of 1998 in a forest somewhere in Raccoon City. After a report of bizarre murder cases happening in Raccoon City with people apparently being eaten, the Special Tactics and Rescue Service, or STARS for short, are sent in to investigate the murders. It's when Bravo Team's helicopter disappears in the middle of their investigation, and this is when Alpha Team are sent out to find them. While Alpha Team are flying in their helicopter, they see smoke coming from the forest. They find a safe landing spot to investigate, and this is where they find Bravo's attack helicopter has crashed. Alpha Team's helicopter pilot Brad Vickers finds a gun on the floor and picks it up, only to discover a severed hand still holding it. It's at this point Alpha Team begin to get attacked by savage dogs, with Joseph Frost brutally being killed by these dogs. I mean, this was gruesome. I don't think there was anything like this had been seen in an intro to a game before. In the heat of the moment and seeing his teammate being savaged to death, Brad Vickers jumps back into the helicopter to take off, leaving his comrades behind.
No! Don't go!
Wait, hold on a second. That snidey bastard. Could you imagine you've been sent to find your teammates who have just went missing around a place where there's supposedly cannibals knocking about, and when it all kicks off, this prick buggers off and leaves everyone behind? What an arsehole. After that snidey bastard leaves the rest of Alpha Team behind, the team sees in the distance what looks like an abandoned mansion and head in towards to seek refuge. This is only where the nightmare truly begins. And don't even dare to leave out the front door either. Resident Evil uses the traditional tank controls. For those who may be unfamiliar with this term, it refers to the player's movement resembling that of a tank. I mean, going straight and press the square to run is fine. Also, while running and turning corners, you should be able to pull off no bother. But say you wanted to go back the way you have just came, you've got to stop and turn back on yourself and proceed. Tank controls would be the standard for future Resident Evil titles to come back then. It's really the only complaint I think I've heard from people who played the earlier games, but personally, I absolutely love this style, and it's a shame it wouldn't work in this day and age though. You can also interact, inspect, and pick up items with the X button. Seen as its survival horror title, there are a few guns to get a hold of to kill the undead. Actually, depending on which character you chose at the beginning, you may start with a gun. Yeah, there are two story modes to play through. If you choose to play as Jill Valentine, you'll start with a Beretta and have 2 extra inventory slots. But if you choose Chris Redfield, you'll start the game with a knife. Don't worry though, you'll pick up guns later on, and you'll also be accompanying Rebecca Chambers through the storyline. But we all know why you should play as Jill Valentine. It's not because you start with a Beretta, oh no, or the fact you have 2 extra inventory slots, oh hell no. It's because you'll be accompanying this Brohansky in the storyline. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you...
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right. Barry, thanks for saving my life.
Barry Burton. He is absolute comedy gold. but I don't think it's done on purpose. I'm not sure if it's down to the awkward silences through parts with the spoken dialogue, but bloody hell, he cracks me up big time. He's an absolute dipshit.
Hey, what's going on?
Now I've done it. Sorry, Jill. Wait. I'll go and get another rope.
Barry? Barry!
You've literally just encountered a mini-boss before this. You can't be dealing with his stupidity after such a close encounter. Some of the shit he comes out with too.
And Jill, here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the master of unlocking, take it with you.
These are all the reasons why he's got to be my favourite Resident Evil character though. But yeah, back to the guns. You will be able to pick up a good selection of guns through your time playing. These include the shotgun, which is great for close quarter combat, and if you're in the right place you can blow a zombie's head off. The Colt Python, a 357 Magnum revolver, much like the shotgun, but you don't need to be anywhere as close. You can get perfect headshots much further away from the enemy. And last but not least, the bazooka. Powerful weapon exclusive to Jill's playthrough. It can be loaded with 3 different sorts of rounds. These are explosive rounds, acid rounds, and flame rounds. It's absolutely perfect for the bosses in the game. There's also a combat knife, but the less said about that the better. I mean, I used it at the start of the game briefly to preserve ammunition, and it went straight into my inventory crate and a save room after that. Now, there's no point in having a collection of guns if there's nothing to use them on, so let's have a look at some of the different enemy types you'll encounter in this game. There is a large amount of enemy types you'll come across. These range from your traditional zombies. I'll never forget the first time I seen a zombie in this classic game, and its introduction to the game is brilliant. Check it out. Even though I've played this a few times, going back and playing it again, this cutscene still gave me goosebumps. You'll also come across zombie dogs, as I like to call them, and their proper introduction to the game apart from the intro is just as iconic as the zombies. This is the first jump scare I ever remember getting from a game. Anyone who played this as a youngster will know what I'm talking about. You'll also have to deal with hunters. These creatures get introduced halfway through the game just when you think you've cleared the house of all zombies. They jump all over the place and can be pretty difficult to deal with sometimes. There's a large snake who you'll face called Yawn. Easy enough to deal with if you fire a few acid rounds at it. Crows too, and these can be nippy. Seeing as you manually aim, it's hard to guess their patterns. I usually just ran from them to save my ammo from getting wasted from missing shots. A shark too, but I wouldn't be too worried about it, although I did feel bad about putting it out of its misery, to be honest. One of the creepiest enemy types for me though were the chimeras. Freaked me right out. They hang from the ceilings in the laboratory section of the game. I just don't know what the hell they're supposed to be, and that's what freaks me out the most. But the one enemy that literally still scared the living shit out of me was the spiders. I'm scared of them in real life, and they look really realistic in this. They ease you in gently by introducing small ones, and I say that loosely, then later on in the game, boom! That almost gave me a heart attack. And when you think you've sorted it out, it hatches eggs and little spiders start crawling from it. I'm done completely with that. The game uses fixed camera angles due to the pre-rendered backgrounds. Along with the tank controls I mentioned before, pre-rendered backgrounds and fixed camera angles is just classic Resident Evil. It gives the surrounding areas much greater detail that they wouldn't have been able to do if it wasn't pre-rendered. I can see, just like with the tank controls, how this may be off-putting to new players, but it has its advantages, and the developers used it well. With it being a fixed camera, you are only seeing what you were intended to see on screen, so you won't miss a single item in the area you may be in due to this. Also, I feel it adds uncertainty. You won't know what's on the screen, and also there may be times you can hear the footsteps or noises from an enemy nearby, but you can't see them. Then boom! The camera changes angle and next thing you know there's a hunter flying right at you. Another thing I think it's great, believe it or not, that is the loading screens. Yeah, loading screens. They weren't like your traditional loading screens for its time with nothing on the screen but a bar and you gotta sit and watch it load wishing it would just hurry up. It's clever how they do this in this game. As you open a door to go from one room to another, it plays out the animation of your character in first person view going through the door. It really is just a glorified loading screen, but this game would have been unplayable if it was like your traditional loading screens for its time. This game may look a bit dated now, but I'll never forget the first time seeing it and being absolutely terrified. It looked like nothing I had ever seen or played before in my life. Throughout your playthrough there'll be a number of items you'll need to pick up to progress. You can store them in your character's inventory slots in the main menu, but you're restricted to what space you have left. There are storage boxes that can be found in save rooms where you can leave items to pick up later, and these carry over to other storage boxes and save rooms you'll come across later on in your playthrough. The shortage of inventory slots adds to the survival horror element, I think. You may be out of ammo and low on health, so do you take the ammo that you found? Or do you take an item that you need for a puzzle you're in the middle of doing and hope to God there are no enemies nearby? I remember the first time I played this at an older age, and it rattled my brain to think what I should take and how I should go about it. Such a simple idea to restrict the amount of items a player can carry, but heightening the intensity of what's going on around in the game at the time. There are a number of files and documents to find throughout the game. These don't get stored in inventory slots but in a file book that can be found on the menu screen. Some of the files and documents help with certain puzzles by giving you clues and codes for doors. One that you'll find at the start is the botanist book, which tells you about herbs you can pick up and use to restore health and the importance of mixing herbs to get the full effects from certain combinations. Other files can be straight out weird. Keep in mind some may be written and left by workers from certain areas you are in, and really puts into reality how bad the outbreak was and the carnage going on around them at the time of writing them. One that sticks out for me is the Keeper's Diary, which goes into full detail about the T-virus which has spread and affected many workers, turning them into zombies. As you read this, you'll find out the man who wrote this is also infected, and you'll see how the virus has set in as you keep reading. These files also help with story progression and put into perspective of what's really going on, which the in-game voiceovers couldn't do that well. More on that later though. Much like the files and documents, there is also maps to collect from each area you discover in the game. These will detail areas you have explored by colouring those areas green. It will also detail which doors are locked. You should never find yourself lost as long as you have a map, because it's pretty obvious if you find yourself stuck, then obviously go to an area you haven't yet explored. Another element to this game is puzzles, some easier than others. Your first introduction to puzzles in this is that some doors are only unlocked by certain keys. Some doors may be locked and you'll be told there's a carving of armour, etc. etched onto the door. Easy to work out, I know. They soon introduce certain death rooms. For example, in this room there are 2 statues, 2 holes on the floor, and a button in the middle. Now I'm no dumb arse, I can guarantee if you press this button first in the middle before covering the holes, some poisonous gas will probably come out and kill you. One puzzle that might rattle your brain though is one towards the end of the game. When reading John's diary to his girlfriend Ada, who later in the franchise would become a key character, it is explained in this diary what the username and password is for the computer in the laboratory, but doesn't give you the password to actually unlock the certain doors you need to go through to progress. It is detailed in the diary how to find this password by examining the painting on the wall in the room. Might look like gibberish until you move the bookcase and press the switch turning on a UV light, and now it all makes sense. Now to convert the symbols into English text. I love a brainbuster in a game. Some puzzles can be completely missed though. For example, at the start of the game you go into this room in the mansion, you see a shotgun on the wall, and of course you're going to take it. Once taken from the display unit, you'll hear a click, which has obviously triggered something. Go into the next room and the roof will slowly start coming down on you, but if you put the shotgun back and wait until you receive the broken shotgun, you can swap them round, skipping the scene with the roof coming down completely. But why would you do that when you'll miss this classic line?
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
There's another puzzle that can be missed, and that's the mixing of chemicals to create the V-Jolt to decrease Plant 42's health before going into battle with it. I've never bothered with it, but I'm sure if you do make it, you take out the plant yourself instead of beating it halfway through and being helped by Barry Burton. He comes running in with a bloody flamethrower like it's Super Probotectors.
Barry!
Jill!
Take a chill pill, man. The music in this game is some of the best you'll hear from its kind. It sets the tone perfectly for this game, from the main mansion theme, creepy as. This then only intensifies later in the game once you've left the mansion and have to return later. It's the same theme but changed up a bit, giving you the feeling of you know this place well but a lot has changed, complementing the fact that the mansion is now overrun with hunters rather than zombies. One theme you'll be happy to hear though is the save room theme. Giving you the feeling of safety from the undead from outside this room. You're untouchable in save rooms, thankfully. Can't have a game like this without some cheese though. Check the theme for the introduction for the characters in the game.
Chris Redfield. Jill Valentine. Barry Burton. Rebecca Chambers. Albert Wesker. Resident Evil.
I get a Team America feel from this now when playing it back. One theme though that is really unsettling for me and made the hair on my arms stand was the theme for the room with the picture puzzle. Once you've turned the buttons on for the pictures in the order from birth to death, this song plays. Especially terrifying if you mess up by pressing the last button first before doing anything else and end up getting pecked to death by bloody crows. With how great the music is, it can't be said for the voice acting though. Now I'm not bashing it because personally I love it, but it's definitely outdated. The long awkward pauses between bits of dialogue and random movement from characters can be a bit laughable and completely random at times. I'll put some clips up for you so you can see what I mean.
Richard! What happened?
Oh, Jill, this house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
You're wounded.
What is this?
Wow, what a mansion!
Captain Wesker, where's Chris?
Stop it! Don't open that door!
But Chris is...
What is it?
Maybe it's Chris.
I actually think this is why they use documents you pick up through the game to their advantage in progressing the story. They are a lot more in depth, and I think they must have realised that the voice acting wasn't really up to their standard. The gun noises in this are perfect though. I personally love the sound of blasting a zombie's head off with a shotgun. So satisfying. There are multiple endings to this game which makes for good replayability. Remember, we are looking at this from Jill's perspective in the campaign. There are a bunch of periods in the game that can alter the ending you end up getting. For Jill, it's when you kill the giant snake Yawn. Barry will come into the room and assist Jill down the hole with a rope, but guess what? The bloody idiot drops the rope after helping. He does say he will come back, and it's up to you whether or not you stay and wait. I just continued on, but if you choose to do that, it creates a tense atmosphere between Jill and Barry, making him turn his back on you, and he will side with Wesker and eventually be killed. You also have the choice to save Chris from the jail inside the laboratory. I did this and I went for the exit, picked up the flare to signal the chopper, and off I went. How anticlimactic is that for an ending to this? We're doing this the real way. I played through it again waiting for Barry this time, saving Chris from the jail and escaping together. This also triggers a final boss fight with Tyrant. These big creatures are biological engineered soldiers designed by Umbrella Corporations, the company behind this whole outbreak. This is what I call a fitting segment to end the game. Boom. One shot with a bazooka and it's goodnight Vienna, thus saving all three good characters, blowing up the mansion and moving on.
I really enjoyed my second playthrough to capture the proper ending for this game, and it's by no coincidence that just before I went to record the footage for my second playthrough, I got this cool t-shirt, Central Scotland Thrash. It's a page on Facebook that promotes up and coming thrash metal gigs coming to Scotland, and I found that nothing goes better hand in hand than Resident Evil and thrash metal, and if you don't believe me, take a look at this.
That was Swarm by a band called Disposable, a local band in Edinburgh who are absolutely brilliant. If you like them, also check out a band called Talon. They're also from Edinburgh, and links to both bands will be in the description down below. Thanks. It was one of the best selling games on the PlayStation 1 at the time, selling over 2.75 million copies on its original release. It currently has a Metacritic rating of 91, which is a very fair reflection of this game itself. The following year from its initial release would see a re-release of this called Resident Evil Director's Cut. It would also come packaged with a demo for Resident Evil 2. There was a few minor things added like auto-aiming, some new character designs and extra camera angles which weren't in the original. Also with this came a new soundtrack for the game. It was composed by, oh god I'm going to murder this, Mamoru Samaraguchi. And no, I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon and hate on the basement theme. Like everyone else does, because 1, I couldn't care about it. You don't hear it long enough for it to get on your nerves, and 2, something that no one else cares to mention is that he was hiding from everyone that he was actually going deaf at the time. I didn't see anything wrong with the music from the original to merit a new soundtrack, but I'm not going to bash it. Turns out this whole time it would be like bashing a blind man's painting. It's just not on. I'm sure in America they were promised the uncensored intro packaged with the director's cut, but they got the same as before, and I'd have been pissed about that because the uncensored intro is amazing. There was also a remake which came out in 2006 on the Nintendo DS. I thought it was brilliant. Adds in a few new features like being able to use the knife with the stylus pen in first person view segments, and also uses the built-in microphone for a scene that truly blew my head away when I first played it. You come across Bravo team member Richard Aitken, who has been attacked, and you have to give him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to bring him back. That was a nice touch. Also, the map is featured on the top screen of the DS while all the action is going on the bottom screen. Nice idea to keep the momentum going instead of pausing to see where you are on the map, etc. But there was another release that was a full-on remake, released exclusively at the time for the GameCube in 2002. But this was amazing, but worth a whole video of its own later on down the line. There's no doubt that this title is a masterpiece, and it's great to see the franchise still going strong.
I really enjoyed going back to play this to capture the footage for my review and also for the series I'm going to be doing. It is an absolute classic game. I highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't played it, and also if you want to find out where survival horror properly started out, then this is the one. Hopefully I'll see you in my next video where we look at Resident Evil 2. That is considered the best game in the series by many, and it's one that I really do enjoy. So yeah, so subscribe to my channel to be kept up to date with future content, and also feel free to leave comments down below of your experience of this game and just any of the Resident Evil games in general. I'm more than happy to talk about Resident Evil with anyone, to be honest. So yeah. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.